We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon and welcome to the midpoint of the week. This is Wednesday, and on Wednesdays we talk about astrology here on Free Association Radio. My name is Robert Phoenix. I am your host, your guide, your mediator between this world and whatever world is trying to formulate itself around us at this point in time. Today is an eclipse, and the eclipse is happening at 5 degrees Scorpio, which is an interesting number in terms of dealing with the numeric meaning of the degree itself, not necessarily the sign, although we'll get into that. I will be doing some live readings later on in the show. I'm not sure if I'm going to be here for the entire 2 hours, only because reality is stacking up on me, and I've got a ton of stuff to do, and obviously this is my most important thing to take part in because it's what I do. However, life is dependent upon other things as well. So let's see if we can stretch this out for as close to 2 hours as possible. And remember, it's about quality, not quantity. If you want quantity, you can go down to McDonald's and get a lot of food and starve. If you want quality, you can go someplace, get just a couple of really nice things, really tasty, filled with nutrition, and then you take that in, and that lasts you a while. It's better for your soul. So think quality versus quantity. So if we go 90 minutes today, it's going to be a lean, mean, green 90 minutes. So there we go. There's a lot happening. Have you noticed? Hello, wake up. It's time to wake up. If you're not waking up, you're falling asleep. If you're falling asleep, there's probably a place 6 feet under that's waiting for you in the not-so-distant future. I know, I'm being dramatic. It is a Scorpio moon. And the moon itself is in a very intense place. Now, where the moon is actually circumnavigating the planet is pretty interesting. It's only going across the bottom part of the planet itself. It's a partial eclipse, and most of us will really not see it in its entirety. However, if you're a penguin and you're living in Antarctica, you're going to have a great view of the eclipse. Now, what's interesting about Antarctica is that it is theoretically the place that is the new home of the Third Reich. If you get into the writings of Robert Byrd, who is the admiral who went to, was it Robert Byrd? I think it's Robert Byrd. I always get him confused with the mind control senator from Virginia. Anyway, if you read the readings of Admiral Byrd, right, and everything that took place down in Antarctica with the failed expeditions and things that he'd found, and apparently had been taken on board a craft and brought into what they call Agartha. It's pretty mind-blowing stuff, absolutely mind-blowing stuff. And I thought it was really interesting that they did the Sports Illustrated swimsuit shoot with Kate Upton in Antarctica. Now, if you don't know who Kate Upton is, she is essentially a swimsuit model. She has a couple of attributes that people are infatuated by. She's kind of like I wouldn't say she's a new version of Marilyn Monroe, but she's in that cast. She's from Dallas, and now she's an international swimsuit model with some very interesting connections. So what they did is they put her in a bathing suit, and they literally tortured her. I mean, that's what happened. I mean, imagine going to Antarctica. I mean, granted, it's probably their summer, but their summer is extremely cold, okay? It's cold. So it's their summer, and she's out there doing a swimsuit shoot. They even talk about, there's a little bit of a documentary on online. You can find it. Sports Illustrated did it. It's about the making of the swimsuit issue. And the director, the director of photography even says, "Oh, I feel like we're torturing Kate." And Kate even talks about it. She says, "Oh yeah, I feel like this is torture." She goes, it almost replicates and mirrors a form of mind control that young women are put through as part of the MK Ultra altering program. So here we have it on display. Where in Agartha in Antarctica, which is supposedly the relocated home of the Third Reich. And that's where, by the way, the solar eclipse is taking place. The lunar eclipse, down in that region of the world. Can we expect anything out of this? Can we expect more Third Reichian symbolism? Can we expect more Third Reichian manifestations of fascism on the rise? Perhaps. I just put up a new post on the website. I mean, literally just moments before the show. It's not complete. I've got to stick some images in there. I have to do some things on the back end. But I've been trying to put together something around what happened in Boston, which is only, today's the 24th, so 10 days ago would have been the 15th. So it's been 10 days now since this happened. And I didn't want to go over a lot of the same material that I've been already talking about on places like Facebook. If you subscribe to my newsletter, you would have gotten 2 days ago a very interesting set of connections that I came about through the understanding of the Battle of Marathon, which took place, I believe it was in the year 460 BC. Very interesting battle. It's the turning point battle between Europe and the Middle East, at that time known as Persia. And so it's fascinating to see this as a reflection, right? The Battle of Marathon and the Boston Marathon. Because what happened during the time that the Boston Marathon exercise was taking place was that billions of dollars of arms and equipment were then sold to Israel, to the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Why? To potentially take down Iran. So here we have that taking place as an undercurrent, and the Boston Marathon, the Battle of Marathon, all coming together in a crucible of time. And time is a very important thing to understand, or at least the notion of time, what time is and what is happening with time. One of the things that I have been really big about, and as many of you know, is this whole concept and notion of Gemini as a bifurcation of reality and timelines, competing timelines. And I keep coming back to this again and again and again. And one of the things that I talk about on the new post is I talk about a movie called Mephisto, which was released in 1981 and stars Klaus Maria Brandauer. It's a great movie. It's a great, great movie. I saw it when it came out. And the whole idea behind Mephisto is that it's a takeoff on Faust, on the Faustian theme. And Klaus Maria Brandauer plays an actor, and this is in Germany. This is pre-World War II. Okay, so the Third Reich is not yet rising, although you can begin to see it take shape and form. And his character plays Faust. He plays Mephisto. He plays Faust. And he plays Mephisto in a version of Faust. So he plays the devil. That's who he plays. And Faust sells his soul. Now, the mirror image of this, mirrors are very important. Okay, they're extremely important. Mirrors are the most essential symbol to understand during this time. Mirrors are reflections. They give you a reflection of reality. But they're not just reflections. Mirrors are portals as well. That's why there's this whole mythology around the looking glass and stepping through the looking glass and going to the other side. It's not just Alice in Wonderland and Lewis Carroll. If you look at the surrealists, people like Jean Cocteau, Jean Genet, Cocteau, these people, especially Cocteau, are very interested in mirrors and symbolism of mirrors. Cocteau does his own version of the Beauty and the Beast, which utilizes mirrors and mirrors as portals. And so mirrors are very important to understand. Mirrors are also used quite extensively in the whole art of programming, because the mirror, especially the hall of mirrors, represents a fragmenting of the mind. It represents subpersonalities when you deal with more than one mirror. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we talk about things today. So what I came across with this whole Gemini piece in the duality and mirroring one timeline and the other is this whole notion of actors and what an actor is. And the actor is an integral part to understand as we get into this discussion around Gemini, because the actor represents two personas. The actor is the person who is performing the role, that's the person, and then there's the identity, that's the actor, which is the projection. And isn't it fascinating that when we see a movie, let's use Thomas Mapother. Do you know who Thomas Mapother is? Anybody out there? Raise your hand. Thomas Mapother? Thomas Mapother is the name of Tom Cruise. That's his real name. If you look at actors, many of them not only play roles, meaning that they're themselves and they play somebody else, but in most instances, their acting name or their stage name is not even their real name. They have another name, which is, again, implicit of this sort of dualistic existence. But let's use Thomas Mapother as an example, a.k.a. Tom Cruise. When you see him in a role, let's say you see him as the guy who's the head of the Mission Impossible team. He looks like Tom Cruise. He's got the Tom Cruise haircut. You recognize him. That's Tom Cruise. And yet, for a moment in time, or 90 minutes in time, you suspend your disbelief. You say, that's not Tom Cruise. That is the head of the Mission Impossible team. But then if you change the movie and you put him in the role of Jack Treacher, and now he's a vigilante, but it's still Tom Cruise, and you still have this agreement where you will suspend your disbelief in order to go along with the narrative. And there you are. You're in the flow of the movie. You're taking the character in, and guess what? You become part of it, because your brain doesn't know anything different. Your brain is just basically recording events. It doesn't know whether or not it's real or not. So when you watch TV, your brain is basically taking it in like it's real, even though it's not. And this is an important piece to understand. Now, your mind is different. Your mind can determine, or has the ability to determine, what's real and what's not real. But even that becomes a slippery slope and a tricky exercise, as we're about to see. So the first thing that you can do if you want to stay awake, if you want to wake up, and if you want to use astrology, by the way, which I think is actually a really good tool for awakening. And I know that people use astrology differently than I do at times. I mean, I'm not your run-of-the-mill astrologer. I don't talk about it in ways that make people feel comfortable, and a lot of times I'm using it to disassemble things. But you can use those things as well to have a greater sense of clarity. These are tools. There are tools all around the wheel. There are tools that you can use. Okay, so what you want to do theoretically is you want to be able to step back and say, this is not real. If it is not real, then what is real? What is real? So you then are on a quest for truth. And then you can use various components of the wheel to understand, disseminate, deconstruct, whatever, however you want to use it, to have a relationship with what ultimately is real for you. And what's real for you and what's real for me may be very different. We may agree on a few things. We may agree on some really big picture stuff. And after that, who knows? So I'm doing the best I can to determine what's real and disassemble the parts of reality that I think are false. But let's get back to the narrative. Let's get back to Gemini. Okay, it's very important. Gemini represents two faces. Two faces. Now, if in the Commedia dell'arte, you have the face of pathos and you have the face of tragedy. Okay, so these are actually the symbols for acting. People think that acting is related to Neptune and Pisces or Leo, and that's true because there's a lot of great actors who are Pisces and Leo. Make no mistake about that. But really, the fundamental core, the nexus of acting, takes place in Gemini. Why? Because it allows a person to take on another role. Now, the name or the term for acting or actor is an interesting one. It goes back to Greek civilization, and the name for an actor, believe it or not, is Hippocrates. Hippocrates. And Hippocrates, not like the doctor, Hippocrates is the term that they use because the actors, they took on roles at the temple of Dionysus. What did they do? They spoke in tongues. They literally became possessed in some ways by a Dionysian spirit. And out of that, they were able to experience a personality that was other than their own. So if we go back far enough, what we see the splitting in some ways of the human psyche. Acting is not an Apollonian function. Acting is a Dionysian function. And it comes from the rituals at the temple of Dionysus. Now, the first actor is Thespis, which is where we get the word thespian. Now, he is widely considered in the West. I'm just saying the West. I'm not saying China. I'm not mentioning Africa here. I'm just dealing with the Western cultural narrative that Thespis is the first actor. And so thus we get the word thespian, right? And what's interesting about actors is that throughout history, really up until the 19th and the 20th century, actors were distrusted. People did not like actors. I mean, they liked them in the sense that they provided them with some form of entertainment, but actors were outcasts. Actors would go from town to town to town, and they were part of a troupe. And they would come into town, they would perform their skits, they would perform their plays, they would perform a social function, but they were never fully taken into the social cast itself. That doesn't take place until the 19th century. And in the 19th century, the art of acting becomes exalted. And what we do during the 19th and even the 20th century is we turn actors into demigods. And that's where we are now in terms of how we promote actors. And out of actors, we have the whole cult of celebrity and people who are not even actors, but acting out a role in their life, which is very strange. And this is where we get into the whole reality TV mode. And even in reality TV, people they don't appear as they seem. They are other than who they purport themselves to be. A clear example of this would be the TV show Survivor, where you have these cast members and you have a guy named Jeff. Well, people just know Jeff as Jeff. What they don't know Jeff as is Jeff Kent, former baseball player for the San Francisco Giants. So here we have, again, deceit, duality, role-playing, and the multiplicity of identity. This is important to understand. So now we have Gemini, Janus, pathos, and comedy or comedia. In the movie Mephisto, what happens is that Klaus Maria Brandauer does a deal with the devil in order to become a great actor. But the devil is twofold in this, in that the devil is also the Third Reich, and he does a deal with the Third Reich as well. Because what happens is that he gets access to all kinds of goodies. He gets to become a creative director. He gets to write his own plays. He gets to have his own troupe. But there's a catch. And what's the catch? The catch is that he must promote the ideology of the party. And as a result of it, he becomes complicit with the rise of fascism. So he's doing a deal with the devil on two different levels. The metaphysical devil and the devil in the flesh. And he struggles with this. But again and again and again, his actions show where his loyalty lies. His loyalty lies to the ego and to the human self. And what's interesting about Brandauer, and I just put this up on my site, is that he is born on June 22nd, 1943, and his degree is 29 degrees Gemini. And if you look at his character in that role, he really demonstrates the anoretic degree of Gemini. He struggles. He wants to get to Cancer. He wants to be able to nurture and love and sustain people and lives and communities. He wants to, but he can't. He gets drawn back into double dealing and agreements and duality and the whole role of acting in his life. Acting is different than doing. Think about that for a second. Acting is different from doing, because if you act, you might not actually be accomplishing something, but you may be attempting to look as though you're accomplishing something. It's an interesting notation or differentiation. So I talk about Mephisto in my latest blog post, and there's more. If you got my newsletter, you'll know that, and we talked about this, that on 4/15, Jupiter and the moon were in the sign of Gemini, and on the 10th house at 3 p.m. in Boston, there was Gemini on the midheaven present at 0 degrees, and that's like a portal. And after that, we've just been dealing with nothing but Gemini duality around this whole thing. There's multiple narratives, there's multiple people, there's the black and white symbolism between the brothers, Zhukar, Tsarnaev with the white hats, Tamerlane Tsarnaev with the black hats. We have the uncle, Ruslan, who lives in Silver Springs, Maryland. When I saw that guy on TV, by the way, I got to say, my radar went off. He lives in Silver Springs, Maryland, okay? It's all about proximity, people. Turns out that this guy's got like deep ties to these Chechens who are doing business with the CIA and banking, and he's up to his eyeballs in international bullshit. He's the first guy that they reach around these two. Let me see if I can do my Uncle Ruslan impression. They are losers. I do not know. I have not spoken to them in 5 years, but they're losers. I mean, so the guy hasn't talked to them in 5 years, and yet he's got plenty of insight into their character. I mean, really, what the hell is going on here? And more people are sitting around scratching their heads. What's reality? Now, it's getting more and more difficult to answer that question on a daily basis, and there's a reason why. And I'm going to explain this to you as we move through the first hour. But there's more. There's more layers of duality around this whole event. You have not just the two brothers, the black and white symbolism, but early in the morning, on Thursday of last week, Friday of last week, late Thursday night, early Friday morning, there were two other suspects that were named in this thing. And their names are Sunil Tripathi and Mike Mulugeta. They were the first names that emerged. Not the Tsarnaev brothers, but these two other guys. And I was having a back and forth with Tom Ford on the Facebook chat that night about this, on Facebook in general. Well, Sunil Tripathi had been missing. He's a student in Boston, in the same area, same Watertown area that they had been looking for the Tsarnaev brothers. He'd been reported missing. Well, apparently his body's been found now. So this guy that they had named as a potential suspect is dead. Showed up today, dead. So now we have more layers, right? We have the Mulugeta and Tripathi narrative. Then we have the Tsarnaev narrative. Again, two. And then there's another two. And they are perhaps linked yet different. There's the Saudi national who received a visit from Michelle Obama in the hospital. And apparently the Saudi national is the son of Osama bin Laden. I can't prove that. That's what Glenn Beck says. Do your own research. But if that's the case, it would be quite interesting now, wouldn't it? And why would Michelle Obama show up in his hospital room? And then the other narrative is the lone wolf white male, the lonely white male with no friends. That's that narrative. So now we have all these threads, lots of threads, and then it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the next thing you know, we're in a rabbit hole, and we don't know how the hell we're going to get out of this rabbit hole. And I haven't even talked about the crisis actors, the amputee actors, or the guy who's Steven Spielberg, or might be Steven Spielberg, but might actually be a doctor. You see where all this is going? It's mirrors. Mirrors, 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 mirrors. Part of this is being done to drive you insane. That's what it is. Because Gemini, if you look at Gemini, what is Gemini? It's the sign of schizophrenia. It's the two. It's the split persona. Now, who is the real god of Gemini? This is an important question. Some people say it's Mercury or Hermes. I would say that Mercury and Hermes is a sub-god of Gemini. Virgo? No, I don't think so. Who is the real god of Gemini? I'll tell you who the real god of Gemini is. The real god of Gemini is Janus. Janus, who is the two-faced god. Now, what's really interesting about Janus is that Janus is the god of endings and beginnings. He is the god of chaos, and he ushers in new ages, new epochs, new eras. He's a Roman god, and what's interesting too about him is that unlike other Roman gods who have their correlative in the Greek mythology, in the pantheon of Greek gods, Janus has none. He is uniquely Roman. In the Roman mythology, we have Mars. In the Greek mythology, we have Apollo. In the Roman mythology, we have Venus In the Greek mythology, we have Aphrodite. So there's these mirror gods in the same in different systems. But Janus alone stands alone in the Roman pantheon. The name or the month January is named after Janus. And what does January do in the Roman calendrical cycle? It starts the new year. It starts the new era or the new epoch of the Roman calendrical year. The number 355 is associated with Janus because originally there were 355 days, and they flipped the calendar around and made it 365, right? 365. So they flipped it around. But 355 is his number. So if you do the numerology in 355, you get 13. And what year are we in? We're in 2013. So this is the year of Janus. This is the Janus year. This is exactly what we're dealing with. Let me just read you a little bit from the Wikipedia commentary on Janus, which I actually have copied on the website here. This is a couple of paragraphs, but they're very instructive paragraphs. I just want to read into you verbatim. Here we go. Let's see. Okay. So, it says Janus frequently symbolized change and transitions, such as the progress of future to past from one condition to another, from one vision to another, and young people's growth to adulthood. He represented time because he could see into the past with one face and into the future with the other. Hence, Janus was worshipped at the beginnings of the harvest and planting times, as well as at marriages, deaths, and other beginnings. He represented the middle ground between barbarism and civilization, rural and urban space, youth and adulthood. Having jurisdiction over beginnings, Janus had an intrinsic association with omens and auspices. And there's more. The function of the god of beginnings has been clearly expressed in numerous ancient sources, among them most notably Cicero, Ovid, and Varro. As god of motion, Janus looks after passages, causes actions to start, and presides over all beginnings. And since movement and change are bivalent, he has a double nature, symbolized in his two-headed image. He has under his tutelage the stepping in and out of the door of homes. What was happening in the Boston Marathon? Actually, in the lockdown of the Boston Marathon, it's a question mark. There was the stepping in out of the door of homes as police, soldiers, you name it, went door to door to door. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, let me read this again. He has under his tutelage the stepping in and out of the door of homes, the Ainua, which took its name from him and not vice versa. The Ainua is January. Similarly, his tutelage extends to the covered passages named Iani, and foremost to the gates of the city, including the cultic gate of Argiletum, named Lanus Geminis, or Porta Lanulus, from which he protects Rome against the Sabines. So here, there's more. So here he has, right? Here he has, Janus is represented as the gatekeeper of Lanus Geminis, which is a portal. It's a portal. Gemini is a portal. Everything that we see as a manifestation of Gemini is to somehow recreate this portal between worlds. And not just a portal between worlds, but it also is a chronometer in some ways to determine one layer of time or one layer of reality and separate it and bifurcate it, which is exactly what this is talking about, from another. Okay? Very important to understand. He is also present at the Sororium Sigillum, where he guards the terminus of the ways into Rome from Latium. So he's a gatekeeper. Janus is also a gatekeeper. He's a city keeper. Okay? He has an altar, later a temple near the Porta Carmentalis, where the road leading to Veal ended, as well as being present on the Janiculum, a gateway from Rome to Etruria. So he's also this god of navigation. The connection of the notions of beginning, principium, movement, transition, euendo, and hence time has been clearly expressed by Cicero. In general, Janus is at the origin of time as the guardian of the gates of heaven. Jupiter himself can move back and forth because of Janus's working. In one of his temples, probably that of Forum Holatorium, the hands of the statue were positioned to signify the number 355, the number of days in a year. Later 365, symbolically expressing his mastership over time. He presides over the concrete and abstract beginnings of the world, such as religion and the gods themselves. He too holds the access to heaven and to other gods. This is the reason why men must invoke him first, regardless of the god they want to pray or placate. He is the initiator of human life, of new historical ages, and financial enterprises according to myth. He was the first to mint coins, and as the first coin of the Liberal series bears his effigy on one face. So the very first coin, the very first unit of transaction in the West, obviously, is that of Janus. Janus is the god of this world. Okay, this is what we're dealing with here. We talk about Lucifer, we talk about Satan. This is another manifestation. Janus is the god of this world, and as such, keeps us locked in to duality. And everything that's being done is an invocation of Janus, and you can clearly see Gemini, 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 Gemini. Gemini is also the sign of spycraft. Why? Because a spy has to play dual roles. What are we talking about here with the Tsarnaev brothers? Well, one of them is supposed to be a double agent, right? Tamerlan and Tsarnaev is supposed to be playing for the Chechens, playing for the Russians, playing for the Americans. So duality represents spying, secret agents, double agents, you name it. Now, here's where it's at. We're going to have Mars in Gemini coming up very soon. Be mighty aware of this Mars-Gemini moment in time. Especially, I don't think Mars conjuncts Jupiter. I think Jupiter has moved on to Cancer by then. And thank God Jupiter's moved on to Cancer, because the Jupiter-Cancer moment in time is kind of a saving grace for us collectively. Because Jupiter in Gemini has not been kind. It is in a terrible place for Gemini, and actually for Jupiter, it's not a great piece for Jupiter. It's in its detriment. We don't see the truth. We don't get above the truth with Jupiter and Gemini. We have little tiny, tiny, tiny pieces that we have to stitch together. It's like a puzzle. That's what Jupiter and Gemini is. It's like a puzzle. So we have to put all the pieces together. It's interesting. I was watching a show last night, just briefly. It's called Perception. And I don't watch a lot of TV. The TV I do watch is generally mindless sports or some news, definitely movies. But I was watching just briefly a show called Perception. And it was fascinating because the beginning of the film or the show, there's a guy who plays the actor in Will and Grace, which is an interesting name for a TV show. His name is Thomas something. I don't really keep up on a lot of TV actors, although I try to, because I have to stay abreast of pop culture. But he was the lead actor in Will and Grace. And in this show, he plays some kind of decoder, cryptographer, detective. That's what he does. And so, in the beginning of this show last night, he's sitting down and having breakfast with an African-American male. And they're bantering, and the African-American male shows him a letter to an editor. Now, it's unclear whether they're lovers, but they are dressed in casual breakfast attire. So there's this hint, there's this insinuation, an innuendo that they may indeed be lovers. But what do we see straight out of the gate? We see white and black. We see duality. Again, the invocation of duality. And then the lead character, the guy from Will and Grace, reads the letter, his assistant leaves, and then all of a sudden, he sees somebody in front of him like a vision. And it's him, but it's him from another time. It's him from World War II. And this other him, this disassociative him, is giving him the guidance and the direction to look at the letter as code, like every 10th word. And as he pulls every 10th word out, he sees that there's a pattern. And the pattern is something disturbing. Now, what's really interesting and slightly disturbing is the fact that he's having this vision and this guy coming to him and telling him what to do. It's completely disassociative. And what does it represent? It represents Gemini because it's another part of him, but yet him from perhaps another time. Okay, are you following me? So then they wind up getting this guy who is in trouble for bringing he's an exterminator. That's what he does. He exterminates bugs and vermin from homes. He brings up a new chemical compound from Mexico to use in homes. Has not been approved here. Kid gets sick, and now there's a lawsuit against him. And there's this insinuation very early on in the show that he might be connected to this letter that was sent to the editor. Okay, keep that in mind. And this woman who's interrogating him wants him to read the letter. And the letter is basically the gripe of a man who feels as though society is out of control, doesn't take into consideration the little guy, that people are being trampled on by this machine. He's now a kind of a lone wolf type. Do you see where I'm going with this? You understand what's happening here. So now this guy, redheaded by the way, he's being cast as a social pariah, that it is based on his bitterness, his discontent, his feeling disconnected, that he is now a threat. Okay? This is important to understand because there's a whole new psychology that's coming out around these events. And the media, not just the media where you have these talking heads that talk about it, on CNN or Fox or whatever, but the media, in terms of its fictional portrayal, is also mirroring, again, there's the mirroring term, is mirroring what's taking place in reality, or theoretical reality. If you watch CSI or you watch the law show, dun 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 dun, I can't even remember the Law and Order. What they do is they will take stories that are current and they'll basically rewrite the story and they'll change the names of the characters and then they'll put it in front of you like it's a potential narrative, a reflection of what's happening now. All of this is conditioning you. It's all about conditioning. And the latest round of conditioning is the lone wolf, discontented, malcontented, bitter, generally white male. And there's going to be, it's profiling. It's profiling. It's absolutely profiling. It used to be the profile, if you go back in time, really back in the 70s, the 60s and the 70s, the profile was, it was the black male. The black male was dangerous. People would cross the street when they see the black male, heavy. Even Michelle Obama, blows my mind. The Obamas are being questioned. They were being interviewed. I think it was by Chris Wallace or the guy from 60 Minutes, and he asked Obama, "Hey, are you afraid? Are you afraid of running for president because you're black and Martin Luther King shot, blah 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 blah?" And Michelle says basically, "No, comes to the territory. He could walk to the 7-Eleven and get shot." You see, I mean, she's mirroring this attitude and this belief about black males. That's flipped now, and now it's the white male. And I hate to sound like a discontented, bitter, disconnected white male, but it's true. I'm just watching. I'm just calling it as I see it. It's the way it is. And here again, we have this duality, the black to the white, the flipping of the script. So we're going to see more and more of that. And it's interesting that the show is called Perception. Perception. Really, the guy that's insane is the character who's getting messages from the past and his alter self. That guy's insane. The other guy, who knows if he's insane or not. But this is the temple that we're living in now. The temple of time. That's where it's at. Okay, so the moon right now is at 19 degrees, apparently, Libra, which is good. I think Libra is underrated. I really do. I think Libra is the key. Libra is the key to it all. Because if you have Gemini as the fractal agent that induces some form of temporal distortion and the reapplication, the reaffirmation of a particular timeline. And then if you have Aquarius as being the template for the time, not Gemini itself, but Aquarius as the template for the time of the quote-unquote new epoch or the new era or the new aeon, then it's the midpoint, Libra, that actually has the potential to balance it all. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to balance these things out. We're here to weigh it out. We're here to find some kind of middle ground where we can stand and begin to take these things apart a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little bit of music, and when I come back from the music, I'm going to get into the Scorpio full lunar eclipse here that's coming up, and then we're going to do some live readings. How's that sound? Does that sound good to everybody? All right, so why don't I play, how about, what do I want to play? I always do this, and I always say that I'm going to update my musical choices, but I never do. Why? Because I'm doing other things. That's why. Let's see. How about just a little brief thing here? How about a little brief musical meditation? It's not even music, really. It's Constance Denby, and this is her invoking the spirit of the void through the space base. It's only about 2.5 minutes. The piece itself is normally 5.5 minutes. But since we're dealing with a compressed, concentrated, and compacted version of today's show, let's do the 2-minute and 28 version of Space Base. That was just a brief sample of Constance Denby and Space Base, a little 2-minute meditation. Oh, I feel different just by listening to that 2-minute meditation. Okay, so we're coming up here on the lunar eclipse. Again, it's cruising past the Antarctic, and it's going to be at 5 degrees Scorpio. And 5 is an interesting number because it's the number of man. And if you look at the 5-pointed star, the 5-pointed star is the human form, because the top of the star represents the head, the 2 points on either side represent the arms, and then the 2 legs represent the bottom parts of the star. So the 5-pointed star is the symbol of humanity, and 5 is the number of man. And if you look at the number 5 in the tarot, it is probably the most difficult number that exists in the lower or the minor arcana. There are some other numbers that are challenging. 9 is also a challenging number, but there is some relief in 9. 7 can also be a challenging number, but there's also some relief with 7. There's no relief with 5. There's spiritual redemption in 7 and 9, but not in 5. 5 in the minor arcana is hell. Think about that. All 4 cards of the 5 represent some form of maleficence. It's hell. There's disappointment, there's strife, there's worry, there's fear. Those are the 5s. So those are the conditions of man. That's what the 5 represents. Now, in Scorpio, what's interesting is that it is a fixed sign. It's a very powerful sign, and it opposes the sun in Taurus, another fixed sign. But the secret to the 5s, in terms of the minor arcana, is that they are really self-fulfilling prophecies. Whenever I would read tarot and work with people, and the 5s would come up, I would tell them that they have a choice with the 5. Now, if you say, let's say you get the 5 of discs, which I use the Crowley deck, would be worry. Now, the more you worry, theoretically, the more your condition becomes worrisome. Or the 5 of Wands, strife, which is spiritual strife, which means things are happening to you that you can't do anything about. And the more that you pay attention to them and the more that you give them credence, the more they become real. So it's across the board with the 5s. The key with the 5 is you have to stop it. You have to stop the self-fulfilling prophecy in its tracks. And what you need to do or want to do is to get to the 6s, because 6 is deliverance. If you look at all the 6s, they're all about deliverance. 6 of Wands, victory, spiritual victory. 6 of Swords, which is deliverance of itself, pushing off from the banks and into the river and into the far shore. That's what the 6 of Swords is. 6 of Discs, success. They are the fulfillment and the achievement of getting through the 5s, the 5 cycle. The 6 represents culture and community. So in order to deal with the 5, you've got to have your mind on the 6. You've got to have your mind on the goal. So part of what you're dealing with the 5 energy as it relates to this moon is when it's in Scorpio, you can make conscious choices. Again, it's a fixed sign. Now we're talking about using the cosmology of astrology in our favor, not in the favor of anybody else, but in our favor. And so there is resolve that's part of the Scorpio full moon. Full moon in Scorpio is detriment. It's a bad place for the moon. I've gotten into this before. But there is the potential for resurrection and redemption, transformation. It is the phoenix-like rising from the ashes of the emotional fires. That's what the Scorpio moon is. And what happens through that process is you transform worry, strife, fear, and defeat. So a very important full moon. It's a very important eclipse. It's not huge in terms of its presence. It's only a partial eclipse, It's going to be taking place south of the equator, way south of the equator. So maybe it's a good thing that it's taking place down there. And maybe it's a good thing that it's partial, because maybe we can handle this. So it's the first of 3 separate eclipses that are coming here very shortly. So you want to use your resolve. Today's a day of resolve. We have Libra, Moon in Libra right now, so we can communicate, we can share, we can balance. But as the night moves on and the eclipse becomes more tangible, as it comes closer and closer to us, then the whole concept of resolve is very, very important. Because there's a condition in your life that feels like it's out of control, that feels like you can't handle, that feels like it's taking control of you. Stop it in its tracks. Just stop it. Because there's another potential reality that you can set your sight upon and move through the temporal condition of the 5, because that's what 5 represents the temporal condition. The temporal condition. It's transitory. It's almost like a Bardo. And if it's a Bardo, then you have to just do your best to exercise the phantasms and the life forms of your own unexplored and unexplained consciousness and fear, and we all have it. Okay, so that's enough for me. Let's talk about you now, and let's get into charts and readings and all that stuff. And if you have any questions about what I've just shared with you, or if you want something full of shit or whatever, you can feel free to call in 347-308-8995, and we can dialogue, or I can simply read your chart and we can go from there. Okay? So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the call sequence and go to the 440 area code. You're on the air.
Hey, Robert.
Hey.
So I have an astrology question. I'm taking a look at my chart here, and I was seeing if you could help me with an interpretation.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
All right. You need birth information, or do you want me to just tell you that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead with birth information, and then you can also tell me too, and I'll do my best to look it up here.
Okay. Birthday is 5/12/1989.
Okay, let me just go to the ephemeris here.
Okay.
All right, 5/12/89. Here we go. Bang. Okay, we're there.
All right. So what I'm looking at is I have Pluto transiting my Neptune and Saturn. They're like right there. And I don't know, it feels to me like I know that this is going to last for a long time, but I was wondering, what kind of things is this going to bring up? And then almost, you're talking about the lunar eclipse, and it's going to happen at 5 degrees Scorpio, and it almost looks like at that moment it's going to trine as well this Neptune and Saturn over here in this 12th house. So I feel, I don't know if there's some kind of connection there, if you see that as well, and like what kind of, energies that it would bring up.
Yeah. Okay, so I can speak to your Pluto-Saturn transit with personal experience, because I have Saturn in Capricorn as well. And my Saturn is 2 degrees off of your Saturn. I have Saturn at 11, so Pluto's right on my Saturn right now. And it will be directly conjunct your Saturn, I believe, in 2014, because I think it gets up to 12 degrees next year, but it'll hit yours. So you've got about, 2 degrees is really close. So you will feel the intensity of that conjunction. And people that have Saturn in Capricorn tend to have a fairly large amount of social responsibility, in the sense that they are in some ways progenitors and curators of culture. And when I say culture, I don't necessarily mean just like the arts and things that are related to, but culture at large. There's a stake. People who have Saturn and Capricorn have a stake in society. They have a stake in the future, because Capricorn is always about looking forward and looking ahead. So part of this Pluto conjuncting your Saturn is about you getting clearer and closer to what your function and role is as somebody who could contribute to the sustenance of culture and to grow the model, a model of civilization. So it's all about understanding your place in the big picture, but not in the sense of like big picture of, well, I'm a dad, or I'm a EMT or anything like that. It's much more related to bigger picture. And Pluto imbues a sense of power, but at the same time, it also takes away and reduces the illusion to ashes. So part of the Pluto-Saturn conjunction would be in some ways a very kind of Saturnine reflection of things not working, things falling apart, things not feeling real, things, there's a coming to terms with reality as we perceive it via the culture that we inherit or we occupy. So it is at the same time an act of reduction and also an act of empowerment, because once you begin to take away and reduce the illusion, then hopefully what's left is something much more potent and much more tangible and much more, in your own estimation, real, whatever that is. Now, you have Saturn retrograde, and tearing down through the retrograde motion would take even more sort of prominence in your chart. And it's the number 13, which is the number of death. So it also represents, again, culmination and endings. So there's a very, for lack of a better term, a phoenix-like association with your Saturn there. And with Pluto coming onto it, it's a lot of power to handle. And I think people that have Saturn and Capricorn have a very powerful responsibility that they've embraced in this lifetime. And part of that responsibility is to be able to, in some ways, for lack of a better term, steer or navigate or be a guide to culture and civilization as it's evolving or as where we would like it to evolve. Now, as part of that, that's a lot of responsibility, right? Because there is some power involved in that as well. So in order to have that kind of responsibility, in order to handle that kind of power, the individual has to be able to let go and has to be able to be really grounded and in some ways humbled at times by life's experiences and to remain open. And that's part of this Pluto-Saturn conjunction that you are going through and will continue to go through, because it in its own way, it's an act of leveling. And through the leveling, you have a much more horizontal connection with everybody and everything around you, because Capricorn is vertical. Capricorn's about ascent. And you can ascend quite high when you have a Saturn-Capricorn aspect in the chart, but you're only going to go as high as your base or your foundation or your ability to stay grounded. So that's part of this as well. It's helping you stay grounded and find ways to stay connected. Because when you do that, theoretically, you can continue to serve and you can continue to help grow culture and civilization, and however that works and feels to you. Now, the conjunction between Neptune is kind of similar, although it's very, very powerful in that it's twofold. Again, because now we're dealing with the outer planets, right? Saturn is one of those midpoint planets. We're dealing with an outer planet with Neptune. So now we're really dealing with culture at large. the illusion of culture, the allure of culture, whatever that is, right? And again, it's retrograde chart, so there's more of this taking place at a much bigger picture for you, but it would also relate to your own sort of spiritual quest as well. And Capricorn represents timelessness. It's like, the great works of art and literature have a timeless feeling, right? They're Capricornian, they exist throughout the ages. So part of this also would be part and parcel of your own exploration of time, timelessness, what's immortal, what's real, and as it relates to your own spiritual quest, it's kind of like finding the golden thread, finding that one thing that makes complete and utter sense amidst all the chaos and the confusion. And theoretically, the two would work together with Saturn and Neptune. So then you would apply the spiritual understanding, the spiritual experience for your quest and your investment in continuing the evolution of culture through Saturn and Capricorn. And as far as Saturn in Scorpio right now, playing off all that's another level, another layer, and with the full moon in Scorpio, it's getting close, but not quite, it's getting close to your Taurus sun. So on an emotional level, I think the moon comes closest in your chart to Mars, which is at 7 degrees Cancer. So you're going to have a moon-Mars conjunction. This can be a very cathartic time. It can be a time where you can be, in some ways, a lot more emotionally confident than perhaps you are at times. But you've got moon. Looks like you have moon and Leo here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't lack any emotional confidence. But the moon and Mars trine can be extremely cathartic and can help you move through emotional states. And because the moon is fixed and Mars is cardinal, in this instance, you can use the energy to start new projects, new ventures. Even though the moon is full, you'd want to start in a new cycle. Mars is cardinal, so this is a good time for you to set your mind to some specific goal or something that you're working on. Because again, what's interesting in your chart is now we bring in Cancer, and while Saturn or Capricorn is about the evolution of civilization and culture at large, urbanization, typified by Capricorn. Cancer is the agrarian principle. It's the birth principle. It's like farms and farming and suckling and all that stuff, right? So you have an investment in that as well with your Mars and Cancer. And this opposition between Mars and Saturn is a really interesting opposition for you because you have to bring the two together. And what's interesting also is that in between Mars and Saturn, you have Jupiter and Gemini, which is duality. So it actually, in your chart, is a wonderful bridge between Mars and Cancer, Capricorn and Cancer, these two seemingly disparate energies. So you've got a lot going on in your chart right now. And it's a good thing, I think, that you're a Taurus, because you can. The great thing about Tauruses is that they can measure their experience and they can measure their output at times, right? Because it's really important for them to have things, kind of ordered and organic and safe around them. So I think you can handle this, but I don't know what's going on in your life, but I would submit that there's some really significant breakthroughs that you're experiencing and some real powerful understanding about your place in the universe. And I think it's only just beginning, to be honest with you, because this is
I think so too.
Yeah,
that's very true. A lot of times all of that feels sort of distant from me, like really far from my conscious way of thinking. And it feels subconscious. And then I look and, I have those major planets, the Saturn and the Neptune and the Uranus all in the 12th house. And so it feels to me like it's always something that's in the back of my mind, and I have to, take on some sort of mental or outside journey just to reach these sort of deep-seated knowings and spiritual confidence and all that just feels far away a lot of times. So that's why I felt like, maybe Pluto is stirring all of that up and, shaking up what didn't work for me maybe and what will work, and it'll shine through what did work once Pluto keeps moving forward. But I think, you told me that it was going to be directly on my Saturn in 2014. That's a long time for Pluto to be around here, I feel like.
Well, hey, brother, trust me. I've got it on my Saturn right now, and it's going to be on my Saturn for 2 years. So, I mean, it's on the button for me. So I can attest that there's a great deal of intensity that's going on in my life right now. And many years ago, I went to this place called Findhorn, and we played this game called the Game of Life. And it was a really, really interesting game because it mirrored your actual life. It was fascinating. And they have these little cards, these little sayings that you get along the way. And one of the sayings I got was, only the best students the toughest assignments. So I think that I'd like to pass the card on to you right now.
I like it. Thank you.
All right. So listen, you got that true node in Pisces?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So just follow that true node. That's your journey. It's not always going to be clear to you. So you're just going to have to trust and have some faith and try to stay creative, because if you stay creative with that Pisces true node, then you can get into kind of a non-linear relationship or nonverbal relationship with these changes. So anything that you can do with art or music.
I feel like that'll help my flow here instead of being so rigid mostly and stiff. I feel like that Pisces energy will really help me to, be in a normal, continuous flow. And I don't know, I try touching with it every once in a while.
Okay, well, listen, you have a good eclipse, all right?
You as well. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks for calling in.
No problem.
All right, bye-bye. All right, so let's go to the 203 area code. Here we go.
Hi, this is Ann. And
hey, what's going on, Ann?
I had a question. I thought you might be able to give me additional insight. I have Mars in 5 degrees Scorpio.
Really?
Yes. And I have Venus in about 10 degrees Cap.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what else is significant right now. I have my moon in Cancer.
Pluto's moved on from your Venus.
Yeah.
But it goes back. We'll go back in November because it's retrograde.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening for you in relationships?
Nothing significant right now.
Well,
even at work.
So the Mars Moon Scorpio conjunction would be, I would watch out for bursts of anger, frustration, potential violence. I mean, those are all pretty standard kinds of metaphors. I would also get physical. I would do something physical during that time. I don't know.
Tonight, you mean?
What's that?
Tonight is what you're talking about? Tonight?
Yeah, I would do something physical. I would try to run that energy. And that could be anything from dancing. I mean, you don't have to go out to a club. You can dance in your house. You put on some music and dance around. If you had a partner.
If I'm not asleep.
If you would have. But the thing with eclipses is that the energy lasts, days after the eclipse. Days before and days after. So you can still do this tomorrow and the next day. If you had a partner, I would suggest that you make love during the Moon Mars conjunction in Scorpio, because that'd be outstanding.
Yeah.
So maybe in the next couple of days. Maybe you'll meet somebody. Maybe Pluto will hit your Venus.
Well, actually, what's happened with my insurance agent, which is Taurus, right, pissed me off, so and that could be causing me problems financially.
Yeah, that could be. Insurance is an interesting concept in terms for astrology, because it does represent Taurus and it does represent Scorpio at the same time, right? Because insurance is a very Taurus kind of thing. You want to make sure that your basic fundamental pieces are right in case anything happens.
Right.
However, if something does happen, then you're dealing with other people's money, and then it flips to Scorpio, right? And then Scorpio comes into play. So insurance is one of those interesting fields.
Except my 8th house is Taurus, so then it really gets a double play. There you go.
Yeah, so that could be it. It could be the insurance piece. Maybe you should have sex with your insurance agent.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm not a same-sex thing right now.
All right, let's throw it out there. You never know, So, but anyway, I think the insurance piece has some resonance around this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Scorpio being the 2nd house, that's usually money.
It is money. Absolutely, it's money. So you've got Saturn going through your 2nd house too. The Saturn 2nd house transit can be a challenging transit for people. Now, if people are willing to roll up their sleeves and work, they will be compensated for it. But the thing too, though, is you have to, in some ways, be associated with the energy of Saturn also running through the 2nd house as well. So in this case, being Scorpio, it would also be for you. It would be about investments. It would be about saving. It would be about financial regeneration. Adjusters. Actuarials. They may play a role in this. But if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and actually work during the Saturn 2nd house transit, you can make money. You can do well financially. But if you don't work, then it's not going to work out. Saturn requires the person to roll up their sleeves and stick the shovel into the ground and chop wood and carry water every single day. So what degree is your Mars?
5.
5, that's right, 5. So Saturn has already passed your Mars, and it's coming back. It will come back. It goes to 4 degrees. It goes to 5 degrees. Then it moves forward again. So you're going to have one more Saturn.
My Saturn is Libra, so maybe that tempers it. I don't know.
Transiting Saturn, though, on your Mars.
Right.
Yeah, it'll have one more conjunction to your natal Mars.
I have a trine to my moon, which is the moon is about 16 degrees.
So if you have an insurance issue that's dangling, it will be resolved with that last pass of Saturn on your Mars.
Which is when?
Hold on, I'll tell you.
Let me think. That's next year, right?
No. It doesn't get back to 4 degrees or 5 degrees again. This is the last pass. Saturn, hold on, is hits 5 degrees in June.
June what?
It goes to 4 degrees. I was right. It goes to 4 degrees. Then it goes back to 5 degrees. So it's the beginning of June. It's actually June 1st. May 31st is when it hits 5 exactly. It goes to 4. It transits back out of 5 in August.
And that's Memorial Day weekend.
So that's the final. Yeah. So you'll be resolved. What's that?
I thought there was another big eclipse. Actually, I have Pluto going into Cancer. I'm sorry, Jupiter going into Cancer the end of June. That's going to help me. But I thought there was another big eclipse that would have with Pluto.
Yeah.
Is it May or June?
I believe. Yeah, I believe it is May. Yeah, it's a solar, right? solar eclipse, but it's not in this part of the world. I think it's in China. And then there's another eclipse. There's another eclipse in November, which is, I think, a much bigger eclipse, and that's the annular eclipse. It's called a hybrid eclipse.
What happened to me, but I'm not trying to give any energy to it at this point, is that the agent had told me on the phone that the rates were going up, and then I noticed that they dinged my account for it, and I said, I'm going to have to look at it later. Well, on her own, she sent some guy out to look at the property, unbeknownst to me, without asking me, to try to get me a better rate at another place. Well, he's come back with a big list of stuff so now I don't know if I'm in the middle, or I can just retain what I have, or if I try to get new, I'll wind up with someone else, scrutinizing it. This is probably all a result of, think about it, it's all after all these hurricanes and everything. These insurance companies are looking to, get their money, I think, out of everybody, especially in Connecticut.
Oh, absolutely.
And I haven't made a claim in, about 11 years. So, I don't know. I've been, right now, I just don't want to get into it. I'm trying not to give it. She's trying to give me a heads up the letter's going to go out. So, but I don't know what will happen. But it sounds like it could get resolved at the beginning of June. And I can stay where I am until I want to make changes.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, I think the only thing you have to also watch out for is, with the moon Mars conjunction is outbursts of anger and rage. Either coming at you or you kind of exploding yourself. And again, if you work the energy, if you run the energy, you can deal with that stuff a lot better. You can kind of roll with it.
So you're saying not passive like meditation. You're saying active like physical activity.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Because it's sacral energy. You're dealing with sacral energy with Scorpio. It's coming from the second chakra. And it's Kundalini energy. I mean, this is what we're talking about.
Well, it's interesting because I'm doing a lot of this energy, deciding if there's a new modality I want to go to. So I have been doing a lot of that. It's like that puts you on another planet somewhere, anyway. But this is also trying to my North Node in Pisces at 0. So.
What house is that in?
That's 6th.
6th house. So this is a healing modalities.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, spiritual healing modalities though as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you may want to look at
quantum. It's quantum. So I'm really in a different world than these insurance people are.
Well, absolutely. I mean, they're in this world. You're in another. Have you done any fire breathing, any dragon breathing? Do you know those breathing exercises?
No, I'm going to go look that up because I am a dragon. I'm a water dragon.
So they're breathing exercises. They're that are like fire breaths, and they're deep breaths, rapid breaths, and they're really good in terms of like being able to clear energy out very, very quickly. So you should check that out.
That's great.
Okay.
The more I clear out, the better I'll be. Thank you so much. Have a happy eclipse.
Thank you, Ann. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to the 862 area code. Thank you for holding. Hello there.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
This is my first call. I'm good. Just a little stressed from stuff that's going on around here, but pretty good.
You're welcome to the party.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
How are you, Robert?
I'm good. So you're stressed out, and
yeah, it's just overwhelming with the stuff that's going on at our school. With the bomb scares that we're having around here with the kids, and also just I've recently gotten on Facebook for the past year, and some people that I just I'm not high school anymore. I'm a mom, and they've been finding me and I'm just trying to keep myself level-headed.
I hear you. Sense. Where do you live, Teresa?
In New Jersey.
So was there a bomb scare at a school in New Jersey?
Yeah, in Montville.
Mhm.
So,
how long ago was that?
Well, they just told us to come pick up our kids about maybe 30 minutes ago.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, so it's, I understand everyone is stressed and, unable to, work with their feelings, but it's, just so very unsettling.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to hear that.
Oh, no, it's all,
Well, but I'm a parent, and I know that when it trickles down into the school, it's really unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not it's real or not, it doesn't really matter in some ways, because the school is supposed to be theoretically this sanctity where kids go and they learn and they grow and all that stuff. I mean, that's the image that we have in our minds of schools. Obviously that image has been desecrated over the last 10 to 15 years. But yeah, it's a real bummer, because now you've also got to, you've got to deal with your child and work with your kid and try to make them feel safe. And it's just really unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that. So
yeah, it is. And, she's only 6. I mean, I have 2 little girls, a 5 and a 6-year-old, and they're like, Mommy, why can't we stay longer? And I'm like, we don't know what's going on, and they want everyone to go home. So let's go home, and, we'll go play outside, and we'll make cookies. Like, I try to make it very comforting for them, but in the same token, in my heart, I'm, like, scared. Like, why, why would anyone do this? Like,
Well,
like,
okay. I mean, so there's, I'm not sure how much you follow this show or.
This is my first time. I was actually, my husband lost his job. And we found out today my husband lost his job. So I was just on, various, just kind of like to ground myself, to be spirit, like the flaming light. And yeah. And so I was just, all of a sudden something came up with your name, and I was like, oh, there's a radio show coming up. So I felt like I was led to you. If
all
that
right,
makes
well,
sense.
let's do this. Here's what I'm going to do, okay? I'm going to sort of sidestep my perception and opinion of what's taking place at a social level, okay?
Okay.
So what I want to do is I want to work with you on your chart specifically, because you've gone through a lot. When is your birthday?
My birthday is March 5th, 1971.
Hold on.
Yeah, I'm a Pisces.
Yeah, well, Pisces is a very interesting sign. My theory on Pisces is that Pisces is every sign all rolled up into one.
We are a mutt.
Because every sign has gone before it, right? So it's like,
yeah.
That's why it's a little bit difficult for Pisces. All right, let me do this here. Just do this. I have a son that's a Pisces, by the way.
Oh, March 5th boy, or?
He's March 8th.
See, close enough. First week is always fun.
When were you born?
1971.
And what time?
9:42 p.m. I was a night baby.
Okay. Hold on. There we go. Okay. And where did that take place?
In St. Joseph's Hospital in Paterson, New Jersey.
Paterson, New Jersey. The home of William Carlos Williams.
Are you from Jersey or no?
Actually, believe it or not, I spent the first 4 years of my life in New Jersey.
Did you like it, I hope?
I have, well, that's a loaded question. I mean, I
loaded question.
I have fond memories, and I have horrific memories of that time. Because it was when my familial structure started to fall apart.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. But at the same time, I also have fond memories of grandparents and stuff like that. How do you spell Patterson? P-A-T-T?
P-A-T-E-R-S-O-N.
That's right. There's only one T, huh?
Yeah. It used to be the Silk City of the East Coast. They used to do a lot of, fabrics and silks. And it used to be a very nice city.
Okay, so there's your chart. All right, let's see. What do we have here? Well, you've got Mercury and Sun conjunct at 14 degrees in your 5th house. Anytime you get a Mercury-Sun conjunction, what happens is that from 5 degrees, really about 4 degrees out, it's actually a very powerful conjunction in terms of being able to use the mind and apply the mind to one's purpose in life, which is the sun. And so the person needs to use their mind in order to get ahead in life. It's part of their purpose when it's yoked to the sun. Now, when it's between 3 degrees and shorter, it becomes more and more difficult in some ways to do that, because what we have now is we have at times a sense of confusion where thoughts can be concerned. A lot of times when people have a Mercury-Sun conjunction, they have some form of learning disability. Either they're ADD, or they have a challenge with dyslexia, or something that keeps them from separating out their mental function from their identity. Now, your Mercury is completely conjunct your Sun. So part of what's challenging for you around this, and it's in the 5th house, by the way, which is the house of children, part of what's challenging for you around this is your capacity to feel and think simultaneously, because they're both intertwined. Pisces is a deeply feeling, emotional sign. Mercury is a communicative and air sign. So when you put the two together, you have this kind of cognitive blend of thinking and feeling, and it's hard to separate the two out. And because it's conjunct your Sun, it's very much connected to your entire identity. You wear your heart on your sleeves. I mean, that's
correct.
The Mercury-Sun conjunction. People know how you feel all the time, and it must be very challenging for you because you're incredibly sensitive. Not only do you have the Mercury-Sun conjunction, but you have Moon in Cancer, which is considered a very psychic sign. You know, it's a very psychic component with the Moon in Cancer. It's exalted, and Moon in Cancer is trining Mercury, and it's trining the Sun. So now you have this really profound kind of psychic awareness and intuition. I think it's really important for you to follow your intuition. You know, I mean, don't dismiss, you know, things that come to you. I think it's vital. And when it comes to your family, when it comes to your husband, when it comes to your children, I'm gonna tell you this right now. You are the person. You're the point person in that family. Okay, and I know that it's important to work with your husband and to try to find, you know, a solution that's equitable for him and, you know, sustain him and support him in his own life path. But you are the point person for that family. And when I say that, what I mean by that is that you are the person within that family that has the spiritual impulse. That it's through you that the actual direction of the family should take shape and take place. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you have an idea, or you have a deep feeling, or you have a premonition of maybe moving somewhere else, doing something else, going somewhere else, you are the person that should be honored with you in that family. Because I see this in terms of your ability to sustain and nurture, which is the Moon in Cancer, and also to have deep understanding and wisdom with the Mercury-Sun conjunction. So you called me up here in a moment of distress and crisis on a number of different levels. And I hope that what I can share with you is that you have the ability to formulate a solution to what's going on for you and your family. The solution is taking place at a very deep spiritual level, and the solution may be the moving or readjusting what's important to your family. And when you readjust what's important to your family, sometimes moving is a part of it. Maybe it's moving to a place where there's less stress, where there's less people, where there's less urban influence. I don't know what that is for you. But I think with your moon and Cancer in the 9th house, it's inevitable at some point that you will move in your life and you will move to a place that feels more like home than perhaps where you feel now, okay? Mm-hmm. The other thing that's going on is you've got a major opposition between Uranus in Libra at 12 degrees in your 12th house with Uranus in Aries at 11 degrees in your 6th house. And this opposition will continue to take place for the next year until Uranus moves past 12 degrees, which it does ultimately in 2014. So Uranus in the 12th house in Libra is kind of an early warning system. You know, Uranus is unstable, it's chaotic, and in the 12th house, there is a sense of feeling like things are never really ever settled with Uranus in the 12th house. And this would be not just now, but also would have other moments in your life. Sometimes a divorce can bring this up in a person's life when they're young and they don't feel settled. There's something that they feel like the ground is always being pulled out from underneath them. Relationships can also have this impact in the sign of Libra. So one of the things that you want to do, again, over the course of the next year is you want to honor some kind of impulse that comes through the 12th house, like an early warning impulse in some ways. And you want to honor it with Uranus in Aries, which is moving, which is action, which is, going to a new place or a different place or doing something that's timely. Ultimately, this also has to do with your work and what you're here to do on this planet. So I would say within the next year, I don't know if you're living at home or if you're just if you're a mom. I'm a mom, and I also have my own business. Okay. So I've been trying to do too, so that I don't, not that I don't trust people, I just would rather raise my own children like my mom and my dad did. Yeah. So I was an analyst. I left my job to be a mom and to just stay home and raise them while also contributing to the family as best I could with, it's different when you work for a corporation versus when you work for yourself. Absolutely. And, I've been trying to do that, but it's, it's not as much as my husband makes, of course, but at least I didn't have to pay a babysitter. I always knew where my children were. I always knew who was watching them. It was something I wanted to do, and he encouraged it. I think you're on the right path to that because you have Uranus and Aries transiting through your 6th house, which is the house of, purpose and dharma and work. So that's a very entrepreneurial and kind of revolutionary aspect. And once Uranus moves past your natal Uranus in the 12th house, I could really see that taking off for you in a much bigger way than it is now. So you're building with the Uranus opposition. The other thing, too, is you've got Saturn going through the 1st house. And anytime Saturn transits the 1st house, it's a very powerful transit where you get to really focus kind of on yourself and on your own personal needs. But it's in the sign of Scorpio. So part of this focus and part of this journey through making your individuality and yourself kind of more concrete is that you have to pull back the covers. You have to uncover what's going on. You have to see things from a different light or a different perspective because Scorpio is subterranean. It goes beneath the surface of things. And part of Saturn transiting your 1st house is kind of it's a transit of personal education and awareness and awakening by trying to understand, what's going on behind the scenes or what's happening, what's the power behind the power, things like that. Because I mean, what's behind the glass? What's behind the curtain on the Wizard of Oz? Exactly, absolutely. And that's Saturn in Scorpio. And the other thing about Saturn in Scorpio, as it relates to the 1st house, is that there is a quality of sagaciousness. And what I mean by that is that the person who is experiencing that transit is more inclined to use their wits during a Saturn Scorpio first house transit than at any other time. So it's survival based, but it's also survival based in a way that can be very, very productive. So part of this crisis, because you're a Scorpio rising, and people who have Scorpio rising deal with intensity. That's their lives. It's part of how they interact with the world is through intense experience. And with Saturn in the first house, it's about learning how to modulate the intensity and make it work for you, because that's what Saturn does. And you're going to have a Saturn opposition here in the summertime. And I think that this could be challenging for your relationship and your marriage. I'm just going to be straight up with you, okay? Because you have Saturn in Taurus in the 7th house. So Saturn is exalted in the 7th house. And I'm not saying that your marriage is going to end, your relationship is going to end, but it is going to go through some kind of a transformation. And there's going to be a tug and a pull. That's interesting. There's probably going to be more of a push for you from your husband to get a job, right? To stop doing the entrepreneurial thing. And you're going to have to balance out the Saturn-Saturn opposition. So you're going to have some negotiating coming to you in August and September of this year with the Saturn opposition. I love your chart. I think you have some really remarkable qualities and traits. You have Jupiter in the 2nd house. You can make a lot of money with Jupiter in the 2nd house. You also have Mars. You're a good worker, and you can finish and accomplish things once you set your mind to it. So I could go on and on and on here about your chart, but ultimately, I think you're a really good person, and I think you have a good heart, and I think you have a highly developed emotional IQ. And my advice to you would be to trust that more, and to acquire more of a voice inside your own family for being somebody to be listened to and heard and even followed at times.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about today when when I called him. I said, listen, I got a call from school to come pick up our daughters, so I'm going. And he's like, well, I need to tell you, we just got our notices for they're going to close the company down. I'm like, okay, well, we'll talk about it when we get home. Everything works out. Everything will work out. We'll just sit down, put our heads down, and figure out what to do. And he panics. He's not, and he's like, well, your optimism doesn't feed the bills. And I know that. I'm not foolish, but I also don't run when I'm scared. I stand when I'm scared, and
right.
I fight and I persevere. And I said to him, whatever I have to do, we'll do. But we have to really sit down and look at the game plan. You get severance package, you get, your 401k. There's options. Let's just look at it, and let's not just, let's not go on fear. Let's go on smarts. Let's just sit down and do a plan.
Yeah.
And he's like, he just doesn't get it. He just thinks I'm too in the moon and in my own head and not really practical. So I begin to doubt myself. Understand, Robert, I just doubt myself. I'm like, well, maybe I am too, laissez-faire and too whimsical. Maybe I am. I don't.
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, again, based on your chart, I think you have the spiritual capacity to really anchor that kind of energy. And he's panicking, right? He's acting out of fear. And look, there's no solution really that can't be solved. I mean, there's no problem that can't be solved. There's solutions to these problems. I mean, my advice to you, if he could hear, would be to simplify your lives. Make your lives less complicated. Scale back, scale down. Do whatever you need, whatever you can, whatever you need to do to just simplify. If you have to sell things, if you have to sell cars, get rid of things, do it. The less complication that you have in your life right now, especially during these times, is really, really important. And you have your true node in the 4th house in Aquarius. And to me, that indicates an unusual or a different type of home or dwelling. And as a mother, you'd be also an unusual or different type of mother, not in a bad way, but in a way that's not cut from the sort of the mold society would have preordained for us. So an alternative type of lifestyle or an alternative type of home is in your future, by the way. You'll be living in a place that is not like the place you're living in now. You'll be living in a place that is much more amenable to some form of alternative value. Maybe it's a place where you share a home with other people. Maybe it's a place where you share a home with some kind of extended family. But I see that in the future, and I believe that that's part of your simplifying process. So hang in there. What sign is your husband?
You know, the funny part is he's also a Pisces. He's February 23rd. He's also a Pisces.
He's in 0 degrees Pisces. And so the 0 degrees Pisces is one of the most intense places for Pisces.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, because it's
wow.
It's at the earliest degree of Pisces. So he's going to be more Pisces than anybody else. I mean, he's going to channel. The thing with Pisces is that they can really succumb to confusion, and they can succumb to doubt. Doubt is huge for Pisces, enormous. And the key to Pisces is to go to the opposite side, to go to Virgo, is to take stock of the situation, just like you're doing, looking at this, looking at that, deal with the 401k. It's a very Virgo thing to do. You're operating within the blueprint of Pisces. So, look, you hang in there, okay? Hang in there, and this eclipse is going to be powerful for you.
Oh, it is? Okay, because I was going to ask that. Like, what can I manifest something? Because I love praying.
It's your moon. It's trining your moon in Cancer. And I think that this is a tricky time because if your husband has lost his job, then he's going to be dealing with, his identity, his self-worth, I mean, all that stuff, which is a very, common male thing to do. I mean, it's not an insignificant event for him.
No,
however,
it's not.
With the solar eclipse, the lunar eclipse trining your own moon, you have the potential to come up with a solution.
Okay.
You have the potential to come up with a solution and transform your lives. So honor what he's going through, but don't let it get in the way of you figuring something out. You understand what I'm saying?
Okay. Yes, to manifest, because that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm thinking of doing. Just manifesting a better life, and whatever God gives me. I could work with it. I just want to be able to just raise my family and be happy with whatever we have.
If you want my advice,
I want your advice.
I would downsize and I would move. That's what I see. Downsize and move. Move to a place that's simpler. Move to a place that's cheaper. I'm sure you probably have family where you are, which might make it difficult. But that would be my advice.
Yeah, and that's something I was considering before. Anyway, I said, you know what, if you're very, we could sell the house, we could do this, and he wants nothing of that. And I can't talk to him right now. I just got to let him be, let him process it, let him be calm.
Yeah, honor his process, and you do some due diligence, put some things together, and stay open. Stay open to this impulse of where you need to go next, because you've got it. You have it, Teresa, with the moon in Cancer in the 9th house, trining your Mercury and trining your Sun. You'll know exactly what to do. I promise you, okay?
I believe you. Thank you so much, Robert. I'm sorry I took up so much of your time. I do apologize. I do apologize.
You've got a really big life day.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're a blessing, and I'm glad I found you.
All right, well, take care, and I would say best of luck, but, I think you have everything you need, all right?
All right. Thank you so much, Robert.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So there we go. Life, people. It's happening all the time. Bombs here at the school. Husband gets laid off. Downsize. companies closing. These are not insignificant times. We are living in times of great and tumultuous change. It's not business as usual. That's right. So for all the Teresas out there in our world that are going through it, whatever it is, just hold space and say a prayer that we can get through the fives of the lower arcana and get to the six, deliverance, creation of a new community, to a new culture, a true vision of a true new world, not the world that's being created for us. Okay, well that's it for today. I was going to quit early, but had a lot of response here. So from Lone Wolf Central in Central Texas, this is yours truly, Robert Phoenix, signing off for another edition of Navigating the Astrological Matrix. I'll be back on Friday, and I am going to run the interview I did with Darren Williams last week. It's a week later, but I am going to run it, so you can listen to what Darren had to say about the Queen, I'm sorry, not the Queen, Margaret Thatcher, who, by the way, got buried. All this Thatcherism got totally buried behind Boston. So we'll run it on Friday, let you listen to that, and catch up with any other news between now and then. Maybe I'll try to get Patrick on here and talk about Bitcoin and gold for a little bit too. All right, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. This is Robert Phoenix. You've been listening to Navigating the Astrological Matrix. Have a powerful eclipse. May transform your life in extremely positive ways, and exercise your demons and your shadows along the way. Take good care. I'll see you on Friday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.